thing. You know, how to buy a house, flip it for $50,000 more in 6 months. Well, there's got to be something wrong with that if you understand any fundamentals like I do, that in Wyoming, if you don't gather nuts in the winter as a squirrel, you're going to starve. There's something wrong with these artificial things when they keep happening. There's something wrong when small towns in Norway, you know, buy these CDOs, not understanding what they are, sell their power plant in order to get the money to buy these things that then fail. So, you know what drives all that? I'm convinced, it's just my personal opinion, I'm convinced that too much of our really smart talent in this country goes in, and some of you are finance majors, and I would plead with you to do the right things when you get out into investment banking and begin to use your brain power to create some instrument that no one but you can understand. But I think that this whole system of, you know, we got away from what was important. The monetary reward in finance and investment banking was great for years. And people could create these instruments and peddle them around the world, believing that some mathematical model was going to answer everything. And unfortunately, as we know from reading The Black Swan, which was written before this current crisis, that when we use normal distributions to try to explain everything, there is an occurrence that happens at each end of that normal distribution, not frequently, but when it does occur, the whole system can come down and fail if you've based the system on that type of a model. I'm worried that we've had too many people chasing you know, these kinds of areas instead of the basic sciences, and you know, which goes to trying to understand true value add. So, you know, is human capital? Yeah, the human mind is the problem here. Can we say it's greed? I don't know. If your parents are a realtor, you know, you probably felt it pretty rewarding while they were selling all this real estate. And many of them had to know they were selling this real estate to people who could not afford to make the payments, and that they were buying that house, you know, on borrowed time. You know, I think credit's a big part of it. We got to be careful what we borrow. My grandfather never borrowed any money. He saved his money and then bought things when he could afford it. And I think that, you know, another suffering of our society is we're so marketed to by every business and every industry that we have desires that are built internally to consume that cause us to consume beyond our means. And I think we've got to get back to some value-driven kinds of decisions as a society. And, you know, the people in Washington seem to think we can prevent these problems by regulation. I don't believe that for a minute, because regulation, all it does is beget the next smartest guy to figure out what to do to go around that. That's the entrepreneurial part. What we're really talking about here are value judgments that we make in our lives. And you know, a lot of you are young enough to where you're going to remember this. You're going to remember 2008. And it's going to have an impact on how you think about commitments that you make to get yourself strung out. I'll tell you just one little story. I was up at, I'm very involved with the University of Arkansas. And about 6 years ago, I was up there. I'm on the Dean's Advisory Board, and Jamie Dimon, who's an extremely bright guy, surely you know who he is. He's the CEO of JP Morgan now. And Jamie Dimon came to talk to a group of people that day. And there were some of us, and then we had a big auditorium full. And there was a student who asked Jamie, did he not feel some social, he probably, today he would not want me to be telling this story of him. And I know him, but I'm going to tell it anyway because he was proud enough to answer this that way that day. Student asked him, don't you feel, and doesn't your bank feel some social responsibility for not sending out all these credit cards to all of us students here with people who are encouraged to use this credit card, and we're piling on, many people are piling on debt that they might never be able to pay off. So I'm trying to remember how exactly Jamie answered that. And he looked up at the young man and he said, well, let me ask you this question. Do you think you're old enough to make a decision? He said, do you drink alcohol? And the young man said, well, laughed and, a little muttering went through the crowd. And yeah, he said, so you think that you're intelligent enough to decide whether you're going to drink whatever you drink, and beer, and then drive or do whatever ever you might want to do? He said, yeah. He said, well, do you feel like that you are, responsible? No one should be able to tell you to decide whether you're going to have sex with your girlfriend. And of course, another murmur went out, and this young man said, yeah, I think I'm all right with that decision. He said, so now you're talking about two things. One is drinking and then driving, possibly taking other people's lives into your own hands. And secondly, you're thinking about putting yourself in a position where you may create a life which you can't deal with and support at this point in time. But yet you're suggesting that my bank should decide whether or not you can have credit? That was his answer. So it is buyer beware. Here's the card. You decide whether you're going to use it. Well, really in our environment, that ran rampant, and it ran rampant across the board in all kinds of ways. But it hit dead center in the in the housing market, and so now we're paying for it. All Americans are paying for it, and we've got to learn from it. But we need to learn from it and then establish our values about what we're willing to do going forward. Somebody needs to stand up and say this isn't right when this is taking place. The problem you have is when in the value chain of real estate, when the realtor gets his fee, the appraiser gets his fee, the loan originator gets his fee, the packager gets his fee, the investment banks sell these and they get their fee, and no one, we say Mexico's got a corrupt system where, you got to pay bribes. These were its own form of bribe here in America. And we have to do something about that. And young people, can work towards that.
I think we're going to open it up now. If anybody has any questions of Mr. Korell.
Yes, sir.
It seems like the hard part of today, a lot of times, is acting on what you want to do. What is it that gave you courage to take the next step and to follow through with your plan?
You start off, I didn't hear what you said at the outset.
Maybe I should use this. In terms of, it seems like the hard part of innovation is taking that step and doing something about it. So when it came time to act on that idea, what is it that gave you the courage to do it, even though you said it didn't quite work like it was supposed to begin with?
Well, I mean, the not working like we thought it had in the beginning is what led to the opportunity. The gas wasn't, in fact, just coming from that sand. It was coming from the shale on either side, which opened up the opportunity. Well, then it's quite simple from there. If you have this amount of area times this amount of thickness, area times thickness is volume, and volume times percentage of porosity, which is a kind of a science thing, but a thing we know how to look at in our business, would tell you there's a huge amount of natural gas in place. So there's a big target there that we can go after. And it's a whole energy source that we could capture a large position in. And that brings to another point. Having the idea is just one little part of it, but being able to capture that idea for your enterprise is critical. And so, here's the thing. Back when we began to go out to talk to landowners, and there are many, many, many landowners, because this is a broad area and a lot of small landowners, and we had to go and make a deal with each one of them, sign a lease and pay them a bonus for the rights to drill there. But if, for example, competitors like Chesapeake or somebody would have learned of this early on, we'd have had a huge amount of competition for leasing. But by keeping our idea to ourselves, we were able to capture this large position. And that's going to go down in history as one of the amazing things. Our competitors still today can't figure out how we got there. And there are a lot of aspects to that. But what caused us to go forward was because this can be a game changer. I remember sitting there well, as soon as we got the inkling of this idea, by the way, we didn't broadcast this across our company. Instead, we locked everything up in a room in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and we only had about 8 people who worked on this project, and they all worked in that one single room as a team. And all of the data was locked up in there, and of course they were sworn to secrecy, even to their wife or girlfriend, and so we kept it very tight right there, you know, we did this work over a 9 or 10 month time period. So we'd get back together, review all the technical work. We got some little core samples to test those, and we kept putting, you know, thermal maturity of the rocks, a bunch of science I don't want to get into here, but we kept, these pieces of information kept coming together, pointing to that it was a large opportunity. We knew if it was that big, then it was a game changer. And at one of those meetings, I sat there when I decided we were going to begin to take leases, which means we're spending big money. You know, we're going out giving people money to get the rights to drill. I said, look around this room. There were 8 or 9 of us there. I said, now guys, look around this room. This could be history right here today. I said, this, if you think about the call that Bill Gates got that weekend when IBM called him and asked him if he had an operating system that could run on something they were building, which was a PC, and he said he did. And yet he didn't, but he went out and scrambled over the weekend, and you know the story, which became Microsoft. And I said, this could be our Microsoft moment. And we had a wonderful occasion here in July of last year, in which I got those individuals who were at that meeting together. Some of them live in Fayetteville, Arkansas, some in Conway, some here in Houston, and we put those people on a private plane and departed from their homes that morning, packed their bags, and flew to a place on Vancouver Island called Port Hardy, whereupon we had helicopters pick us up and fly us up into the rivers on the mainland in British Columbia, and did celebrate that group of people for 3 days, salmon fishing from helicopters. You know, we landed in the rivers and fished. It was the greatest experience, and I called that capture the moment, a celebration. And it's a way, you know, within companies it's important to celebrate these kinds of things. And let me tell you the stories that went on that night amongst those people and the recollections of the individual events and contributions that others made. It was such an occasion of thanksgiving. There was no one bragging, but rather each one of those people was talking about what the other people on the team had done. It was far more rewarding than the economic success for me. So, you know, we could see the potential of it, I guess I would say, and we pursued it in earnest, and we pursued it in a very smart way.
You're talking about curiosity and taking risks. Was that very important for you to succeed in the company?
Could you repeat that with?
You were talking about curiosity.
Yeah.
Was that pretty much taking risks? Was that the reason why you succeeded in your company?
Well, the curiosity is what helped identify the idea, you know, the potential. And then the risk-taking is sort of, you know, of a different aspect of it. I don't like to take unmitigated, you know, risk that I don't understand. So I'd like to try to quantify the risks. And in our case, you know, we were investing really what turned out to be a small amount of money now, when in a relative sense, in order to capture the opportunity, to capture the rights to drill and test this idea. So that was like $23 million that in 2 years, we invested $23 million in 2 years before we drilled a well. So we were taking that risk. We could have drilled the first well and there was no gas. No, we didn't think so because the data said there was gas there. We didn't know if we'd be able to get it out of there economically. We had to do a lot of work to figure all that out. We keep getting better even today now. We're down the road almost 6 or 7 years from the beginning. But the risk and reward, I guess, the relationship there was intact to where the leverage of that money we were investing in the very beginning would be far overcome by the potential of the success if it worked. And to give you an idea now, this year and last year, we invested about $1.8 billion each year. $1.8 billion. And we're out there drilling wells and completing them. We had no office in Conway, Arkansas, and tomorrow I'm getting on the plane at 9 in the morning to go up there to celebrate the production volumes for our company now are we produce 1 billion cubic feet of gas a day. So we're getting all the people who work up there together for a celebration of that, sort of that landmark in our growth. And tomorrow we'll have 1,000 people at this event. We have 1,000 employees now in Conway, Arkansas. We had 0 there in 2004. And so, what's even more fun about that is Arkansas is a pretty darn poor state. And most of the people, lots of people there go away to work somewhere else. And one of the really rewarding things for me, in fact, we were up there a little over a year ago because we celebrated getting to 500 million cubic feet of gas a day. Now we've doubled that. I got up in front of that group of people, roughnecks, pumpers, engineers, geologists, accountants, the whole shooting match, all kinds of people. And when I looked out there at all of those people whose lives this one idea had impacted, I teared up and cried. Because we affected people's lives. And hopefully some of you will have the opportunity to live what I have, which is really the American dream. It's participation and freedom and free enterprise in a capitalistic system which today is bannered about as though it has no value. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Korell.
We want to offer a brief judgment at the end. A true approach to reality can only start from the attitude which man is pushing towards all reality, that is, curiosity. I think the dialogue with Mr. Korell has shown this, in particular when he spoke about important actions such as noticing things, learning, looking for information, and staying in front of the incongruities as they appear. But this curiosity, which would be the innate attitude of a human being, think of the curiosity of a child, is only sustained just for a few people we recognize as geniuses. There is also the possibility to have this curiosity reawakened by participating in life with an exceptional person. Exceptional exactly because he is capable of generating this reawakening in us. We wish that everyone could encounter people that can help us to recapture this fundamental dimension of our humanity that allows us to face, know, and deal with all of reality. In the end, there is no way to really know and be passionate about anything other than this curiosity which desires to follow any glimpse of truth.